We can't reach you. Something's blocking the bridge. Blocked by what? My wife is going unconscious. Get over here. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. Right in the middle of my bridge stood a wall of trash, piled higher than the railings. The ambulance lights on the far side of the river spun in frantic circles. Red, white, red. Close enough for me to hear the engine, but too far to save my wife. That was the moment I understood. HOA. Karen didn't just block a bridge. She came damn close to killing my family. If you want the truth from the very beginning, it all started in a place that was never meant for chaos. My name's John Hale, third-generation farmer, and the owner of a modest patch of land we call Hale Acres. Around here, folks measure wealth in sunrises, quiet evenings, and the sound of gravel under your boots, not the size of their house or how perfect their lawn looks on Sundays. My grandfather built this farm during the tail end of the Dust Bowl era. He used to say the land doesn't just belong to you, you belong to it. Funny thing is, the older I get, the more that rings true. Every fence post, every creaking barn hinge, every weathered plank on my property has a memory carved into it. And then, there's the bridge. A small, simple wooden bridge crossing the Thompson River. A slow, cool ribbon of water that cuts through my land like it was always meant to be there. That bridge isn't just lumber and nails. It's the reason my family survived 2 floods, a wildfire, and more than 1 medical emergency over the last 60 years. It's the vein that keeps our world connected to the rest of the county. Without it, the nearest road is nearly an hour away over rough hills and washouts. Most folks don't know this, but the spot where my bridge sits is the only place along the river for 5 straight miles that's deep and calm enough for a boat or a kayak to enter safely. Everywhere else, the water's too shallow, too rocky, or too wild. That single location, that small patch of river, is what my grandfather chose because it was perfect for a bridge. And ironically, that same perfection is exactly why someone else wanted it. On the far side of the river, past the cottonwoods and that long bend in the water, sits River Glen, a shiny HOA neighborhood with fresh paint, matching mailboxes, and more rules than residents. They like everything quiet, controlled, color-coded, and predictable. And if it's not predictable, well, they make it predictable. Their president, Karen Summers, is a woman built out of sharp edges and sharpened words, always dressed like she's on her way to file a complaint somewhere. When she first came down my gravel road a few years back, carrying a clipboard like it was a weapon, I knew she was trouble, the kind of trouble that smiles while it digs a hole under your feet. But back then, the worst she ever did was try to invite me to join her HOA, even though my land doesn't fall under their jurisdiction, not by an inch. I said no. Then I said it again, and again. What I didn't know at the time was that no wasn't something Karen could swallow. This land of mine, this simple, stubborn, beautiful patch of earth, was about to get caught in the crosshairs of someone who thought rules didn't apply to her, someone who believed progress meant paving over anything that didn't fit her vision, and someone who decided that my bridge, the very thing my grandfather built with his own hands, was standing in her way. That was the beginning, before the threats, before the lies, before the night she dumped a mountain of garbage on my bridge and nearly cost my wife and unborn child their lives. And that's the story I'm about to tell you. From the first knock on my door, to the moment the judge slammed his gavel so hard, Karen flinched like she'd been shot. This is how an HOA war began, and how it ended with handcuffs, indictments, and the loudest apology a neighborhood ever had to make. Karen Summers showed up on a Monday morning, the kind of morning where the sun hangs low and warm over the hay fields, and the air still smells like dew. I remember it clearly because I was fixing a cracked irrigation pipe with my hands wrist-deep in mud when I heard tires rolling slow over the gravel road. Nobody, and I mean nobody, drives down my road unless they're lost, invited, or looking for trouble. Karen wasn't lost, and she damn sure wasn't invited. Her white SUV coasted to a stop right at the entrance of my bridge, dust swirling behind her like a tail. She stepped out wearing a tennis outfit so clean it could have been ironed on her way over. Behind her were 2 HOA board members, men I'd never seen before, both clutching clipboards like they were holy scripture. Karen walked with the confidence of someone who'd never fixed a fence, shoveled manure, or done anything that involved dirt. Her eyes scanned my land like she was appraising furniture. "Mr. Hale," she called out, forcing a smile so tight it could have snapped. "We need to discuss your bridge." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked up slow. "Morning, Karen. What's the issue now?" She didn't even wait for me to finish. "It's obstructing our development plans," she said, motioning to the river like she owned it. One of her clipboard soldiers chimed in. "We're launching a community waterfront project, kayak docks, paddleboard stations, a small pier. Investors are lined up. Permitting is in progress." I almost laughed. The Thompson River barely moves most days. But I knew immediately what their real target was. My bridge. I folded my arms. "And what's that got to do with me?" Karen put on that tone entitled, "Folks use when they want to sound polite while talking down to you." "Your bridge sits on the only stretch of river deep enough for us to build the launch zone. Everywhere else is too shallow or unstable. The project can't move forward unless the obstruction is removed." Obstruction. That was the word she used. Not bridge, not structure, not your private property. Obstruction. I stepped past her and laid a hand on the weathered wooden railing. Rails I've sanded and replaced and reinforced since I was old enough to swing a hammer. "This bridge has been here for over 50 years, I said. "It's registered with the county, surveyed, certified. Built by my grandfather, long before River Glen was a twinkle in a developer's eye." Karen took off her sunglasses and let them dangle from her fingers like a weapon. "We're asking you to either elevate it or remove it entirely within 72 hours. "No." I didn't shout it, didn't growl it, just said it plain, like gravity or sunrise. Her eyebrow twitched. "Mr. Hale, the HOA doesn't tolerate delays. We have timelines, investors, expectations." "And I have a wife due any day," I said. "I'm not tearing down anything." Karen stepped closer, too close. "This is bigger than you realize," she whispered. "You're holding up an entire community's progress." I met her stare. "Then your community can build somewhere else." For a moment, the only sound was the river rolling slow beneath us. Then she snapped her sunglasses back on, turned sharply, and clicked her heels across the wooden planks like she was stomping on my grandfather's bones. As she reached her SUV, I heard her mutter to one of her board members, "He'll come around, or we'll make him." The SUV pulled away, dust rising behind it like smoke from a fuse. I stood there alone, staring at the bridge, feeling a knot settle in my stomach. Not fear, just that old, familiar sense a man gets when he knows a storm is coming. A storm with a clipboard, and a smile sharp enough to cut rope. What I didn't know then was simple. Karen didn't just want the river. She wanted control. And the quickest way to control a man is to cut off the one road that connects him to the rest of the world. She'd just declared war. And she didn't even know what kind of man she picked a fight with. Trouble has a way of whispering before it starts shouting. And a couple nights after Karen's little bridge ambush, I heard the first whisper. It was late, later than I usually stay awake. The house was quiet except for the soft, restless breathing of my wife upstairs. Her due date was right around the corner, and I'd taken to walking down by the river at night just to clear my head. That's when I saw them. Headlights, dim and low, creeping along the River Glen side of the water. I shut off my flashlight and ducked behind the fence line. Sound travels unusually well across the Thompson River. A whisper on one side can feel like someone talking beside your shoulder. Two shadows stood near the bank, one tall and thin, wearing a ball cap, and the other with a posture I recognized instantly. Karen Summers. She carried herself like a woman too proud to bend, too entitled to back up once she'd decided she was right. The tall man spoke first, sharp and irritated. "Karen, we're already 20 grand deep in permits and environmental filings, $20,000 gone. And if we don't break ground by the first of the month, the investors pull out. All of them. I'm not taking the fall for your incompetence." That man was Craig Mills, HOA treasurer, a nervous little pencil pusher at meetings. But right now, under the moonlight, he sounded like a man with everything to lose. Karen fired back instantly, her voice tight with frustration. "I told you I'd deliver, but he's stonewalling us. He refuses to move the bridge." Craig stepped closer, lowering his tone into something darker. "Well, then make him. Because if this project dies, I swear to God, you're the one explaining it to a room full of pissed-off investors, not me." Karen clenched her jaw so hard I could hear her teeth click. "I said I'll handle it," she snapped. "One way or another." Craig exhaled sharply, clearly unconvinced. "You'd better, because if we lose these investors, I'm done. You're on your own. And don't think for a second I'm going to prison over a damn kayak pier." He walked back toward the SUV. Karen lingered, staring across the water, staring at my bridge. Everything went quiet, just the sound of the river rolling beneath her and the faint hum of insects in the grass. Then, almost to herself, but loud enough for me to hear, "He'll move, or I'll move it for him." The SUV door slammed shut. The headlights swept across the trees and disappeared down the road. I stayed there for a long moment, letting the cold night settle over my skin. $20,000, a deadline, investors ready to bail, and Karen caught in the middle like a cornered animal. People think greed is loud, but real greed, the dangerous kind, is quiet, calculated, patient. I walked back toward the farmhouse, my boots heavy on the dirt, knowing deep down this wasn't going to end with polite letters or HOA warnings. They were desperate, and desperation makes people reckless. I didn't know how far they'd go. Not yet. All I knew was that the storm wasn't coming anymore. It had already started. In the days that followed, things didn't get loud. They got quiet. And around here, quiet is what kills you. Karen didn't come back down my road right away. Craig's truck didn't show up either. But that kind of silence feels less like peace and more like the breath someone takes right before they swing a punch. The first sign came on a Wednesday morning. I stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee, ready to start the day, when something bright caught my eye. A single sheet of paper slapped dead center on my front door. Bright orange, laminated, meant to look official. I pulled it off and read the header. River Glen, HOA, Environmental Notice of Violation. I almost laughed. Apparently my bridge was now a hazard to water flow, a visual obstruction, and, my personal favorite, a community aesthetic disruption. I crumpled the notice and tossed it onto the porch bench. HOA paperwork means nothing out here unless the county signs off. And the county hadn't signed a damn thing. Later that afternoon, I spotted two unfamiliar men standing just beyond my fence line, pretending to take pictures of wildlife. But their cameras were pointed straight at my property markers. One of them gave me a stiff nod before they walked off. Surveyors, contractors, or just another squad of Karen's clipboard soldiers. Didn't matter. They weren't welcome. The real trouble came that night. The wind picked up around midnight, rattling the windows hard enough to wake me. I got up, checked on my wife, then glanced at the security monitor downstairs. 3 alerts, back to back. All from the cameras near the bridge. I slipped into my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and headed down the gravel path. The moon hid behind the clouds, making the world darker and heavier than usual. Halfway there, I heard it. A metallic click, like someone fiddling with a latch or a power box. I killed my flashlight and hugged the fence line, letting my eyes adjust. And there, crouched beside the junction box, feeding my bridge camera, was a silhouette. Small toolkit open. Screwdriver in hand, head darting left and right like a spooked animal. I took one slow step, and the gravel shifted under my boot. He froze, then lunged forward, grabbed a bundle of wires, and ripped. The tiny LED on the camera went dark. He stared at it, waited, and when it didn't come back on, he let out a breathy little laugh, a victory laugh. He thought he'd done it, thought he'd killed the camera. He snatched up his toolkit and sprinted across the bridge, running like a man proud of a job done wrong. But here's the thing about cameras on a farm. Anything important, anything you depend on, you always back it up. That bridge camera wasn't just wired to my power box. It had a solar trickle panel on the south post and a backup lithium battery inside the casing. The moment he yanked the main line, the system switched to backup, quietly, automatically, and kept recording. It caught everything, his face, his panicked little trot across the planks, and the plate number on the SUV waiting for him on the River Glen side. And the best part? Karen had no idea. Her errand boy probably bragged that he'd cut power. She probably smiled, poured herself a victory glass of wine, and told herself the bridge was blind. She thought she had a free pass, thought she could do whatever she wanted in the dark, And that false confidence, that arrogance, was exactly what would ruin her. Because by the next night, when the garbage truck crept in with its headlights off, those cameras were awake, watching, and recording every last crime in perfect clarity. They walked straight into the trap, not because I set one, but because they tripped over their own stupidity. There's an old saying around here, a storm and a baby never come on schedule. And that morning, I learned just how true that is. It started quiet, too quiet in hindsight. I woke before sunrise to check the animals, same as every day. The air was heavy, warm, the kind of warmth that sits on your skin like a warning. I fed the goats, walked the fence line, checked the generator, routine comforts of a man trying to keep life steady. When I stepped back inside, I found Mallory sitting on the edge of the bed, one hand gripping the blanket, the other pressed hard against her stomach. Her face was pale. "Honey," I said softly. She didn't answer at first, just sucked in a breath like she'd been hit hard in the ribs. Then she looked up at me, eyes wide, too wide. "John, I don't feel right. Not, I'm having contractions. Not, it's time. Something deeper, darker, different." I dropped to my knees in front of her. "What's wrong? Tell me." My heart's racing. I feel dizzy. And the baby, I don't know. Something's wrong. Those aren't the words any father wants to hear. Not from the woman he loves. Not when she's 38 weeks pregnant. Not when the nearest hospital is a long drive across rough country. My hands were already reaching for my phone. "Lie back. Breathe slow. I've got you." I punched 911 with my thumb. It rang once. Then a calm voice answered. "911, what's your emergency?" "This is John Hale, Hale Acres Farm. My wife's 38 weeks pregnant. She's dizzy, heart racing. She needs help now." "Is she conscious?" "Yes, but barely." "Okay, we're dispatching an ambulance now. Stay on the line." I looked at my wife, her breathing shallow, her fingers clutching mine like she was holding on to the last solid thing in the world. The dispatcher spoke again. "Sir, response time to your property is 45 to 50 minutes, depending on road condition." Normally, that wouldn't have scared me. That's why the bridge exists, my direct line to civilization. But a memory cut through my thoughts like a lightning strike. The camera, the intruder, the wires ripped out. Karen's voice in the moonlight. "It'll be done, one way or another." My stomach went cold. "Honey, I'm taking you to the truck," I said. "We're not waiting." I scooped her into my arms, her breath warm against my neck, but growing lighter, weaker. Outside, the air felt too still, too quiet. I got her into the passenger seat, turned the key. The engine groaned. I tried again. Nothing but a sick grinding sound. A third time. Still nothing. I slammed my palm against the steering wheel. This truck had started every morning for 15 years. Even in storms, even in snow. And it chose this moment to die. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the truck that failed. It was timing. Cold, cruel timing. I grabbed my phone again. 911, my truck won't start. How close is the ambulance? Sir, they're approaching the river crossing. They'll update shortly. I lifted my wife out of the truck, her arm slipping around my shoulder, her breath shallow. We weren't waiting. We were walking. The river is only half a mile from the house. Flat ground, normally an easy stroll. But when you're carrying the woman you love and the child you haven't met and fear is squeezing your ribs like a vice, that half mile feels like 100. We were halfway down the dirt path when my phone buzzed. Sir, this is EMT Unit 3. We've reached the bridge, but we can't get through. The bridge is blocked. Blocked by what? I shouted. There was a beat, static. Then, it looks like trash, a lot of it. We can't drive across. My heart punched against my ribs. Trash. The bridge. Karen. Honey, hold on, I whispered. We're almost there. I pushed myself harder, boots digging into dirt and gravel. My breath came out in burning bursts. When the tree line broke and the bridge came into view, I stopped, dead in my tracks. Because there it was, a mountain of garbage, taller than me, blocking the entire span of my bridge. Bags, broken furniture, splintered pallets, even chunks of fencing, trash, and something else, something worse. A cracked, sun-faded kayak with a bright sticker on the side. River Glen, HOA, property tag. Anger rose in my chest like fire, but fear rose faster. On the far side of the river, the ambulance lights spun urgently, flickering across the water like the last hope we had. But the rig couldn't move. It was stuck. We were stuck. "Honey," I whispered, voice cracking, "stay with me." She squeezed my hand weakly. And that was the moment. The exact moment. When the world stopped feeling fair or orderly or predictable. I wasn't looking at a pile of trash. I was looking at a weapon someone had aimed at my family, and the shot had already been fired. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because I was tired, not because my legs were shaking from carrying my wife that far, but because of the sight in front of me. A sight no husband, no father, no human being should ever have to witness. A wall of trash, 5, maybe 6 feet high, piled across my bridge like a barricade in a war zone. And on the far side of the river, barely 50 feet away, stood the ambulance. Lights spinning, engine rumbling, siren pulsing like a heartbeat. So close, and completely unreachable. My wife's fingers tightened weakly around my neck. "John," she breathed, her voice fading. It wasn't fear in her tone. It was something worse, something that hollowed out the inside of my chest. Acceptance. And that sound almost broke me. I lifted my head and shouted across the water, "Hey, we're here! She needs help!" One of the EMTs leaned out the ambulance window. "We see you! We're coming over on foot. Hold on." The back doors flew open. 2 paramedics jumped out, grabbing bags and equipment. They sprinted across the bridge until they hit the garbage mound. One cupped his hands. "Stay with us! We're climbing!" They dropped their gear, scrambled up the trash pile, slipping on plastic bags, scraping hands on broken furniture, boots sinking into a mess someone dumped like a personal vendetta. A jagged fence post nearly took one EMT's eye out. Another cut his palm open on a bent metal rod. Blood dripped down the post as he wrapped his hand in gauze and kept climbing. My wife went limp in my arms for 2 terrifying seconds. I whispered, "Stay with me, honey. Please, stay." She didn't answer. The first EMT reached us, panting, his face smeared with dirt and sweat. "Lay her down, now." I eased her onto the ground. The EMT snapped into motion, checking her pulse, oxygen, belly, breathing. His expression tightened. "We need to move, fast." The second EMT unfolded a stretcher and helped lift her onto it. They placed an oxygen mask over her face, started an IV, worked like men fighting the clock. Respiration unstable, BP dropping. "Let's go!" We carried the stretcher toward the trash barricade. They climbed first, pulling, dragging the frame. I pushed from behind, lifting with everything inside me. The stink of rotten chemicals filled my lungs. The EMT in front slipped. The stretcher dipped. I caught it. The EMT behind lost footing. I shoved upward. We steadied it. Every step felt like dragging a boulder through quicksand. At the top, the far side finally came into view. The ambulance, the road, salvation. We began lowering the stretcher down the front slope of the garbage wall. Slow, careful, inches at a time. We hit the wooden planks with a heavy thud. The EMTs ran the last stretch, wheeled her up, loaded her in, slammed the doors. One leaned out. "You ride with us, go!" I climbed into the passenger seat. The driver hit the lights. The siren screamed to life. We tore down the gravel road like the world was on fire. As we sped away, something tugged at me. Something cold, instinctive. I turned in my seat and looked back through the rear window. Back toward the bridge, back toward the garbage mountain. In the flashing wash of red and white lights, I saw something I hadn't caught before. A streak. A dark, wet streak of crimson smeared across a jagged metal beam jutting from the pile. Not trash, not rust, not old stains. Fresh blood. The EMT's blood. Left behind on the weapon Karen Summers built out of garbage. A fingerprint in red. A signature of guilt. That's when it hit me. Karen hadn't just dumped trash. She had drawn blood. And that smear, that tiny streak of DNA, was now stamped right onto her crime scene like a confession written in flesh. No HOA excuse could erase that. No beautification project could hide it. No lie could cover it. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't an accident. This was criminal obstruction, reckless endangerment, assault by proxy, and something far darker. I turned forward again, jaw tight, breath shaking. Whatever happened next, whatever the law required, whatever justice demanded, that blood was going to speak louder than any testimony I'd ever give. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt certainty settle deep in my bones. She'd finally given me the evidence that would bury her. The ride to the hospital felt longer than the drive across the whole damn county. The ambulance shook on every bend, every bump, every loose stone. The EMTs worked on my wife non-stop, adjusting her oxygen, checking her vitals, monitoring the baby's heartbeat. I sat there gripping the seat so tightly my knuckles went white. Every few seconds I'd whisper, "Stay with me, honey. Stay with me." When we finally skidded into the hospital bay, the doors flew open. The EMTs rushed her inside. I tried to follow, but one of them stopped me. "Give us a minute, sir. Let us stabilize her." A minute, the longest minute of my life. I paced the hallway, boots clacking against the tile, lights buzzing overhead. The air smelled like antiseptic and worry. Then I heard it. Not a shout, not panic, but the soft, steady cry of a newborn. A nurse stepped out with a tired smile. "You're a father, Mr. Hale." Those words almost brought me to my knees. They led me inside. There she was, my wife, exhausted but alive. And in her arms, wrapped in a blue blanket, was our son. 7 pounds, 9 ounces. Full head of dark hair. Little chest rising and falling, like he was already fighting his way through the world. I touched his tiny hand. He wrapped his fingers around mine, small, warm, stronger than anything I'd ever felt. "Eli," I whispered. "We'll call him Eli." For a few precious minutes, there was no bridge, no trash, no fear, just the three of us, breathing together in a world that had almost taken them from me. But even in that quiet, I felt a shadow sitting in the back of my mind, a reminder. We survived today, but someone had tried to make sure we wouldn't. I kissed my wife's forehead, placed a hand gently on Eli's back, and made a promise I didn't speak aloud. This family will be safe, whatever it takes. I stepped out into the hallway to breathe, to steady myself, to let the reality sink in. And that's when I saw him, standing near the nurse's station, hat in his hands, shoulders stiff, eyes carved out of stone. Sheriff Ray. He didn't smile, didn't offer congratulations, just nodded and walked toward me, lowering his voice as he got close. "John," he said quietly, "the EMTs told me what happened at the bridge. They told me about the blood." He paused, letting it hang there. "I need you to show me exactly where it is, because if what they said is true, this isn't a civil dispute anymore." I looked back through the small window in the door, my wife resting, my newborn son curled against her chest. Then I looked at Ray, a calm, cold certainty settling into my bones. "I'll show you," I said. The baby was safe. My wife was safe. Now? It was time to hunt. Sheriff Ray and I drove back to my property just after dawn. The sky was still that pale blue-gray you get before the sun decides whether it's rising or hiding. Ray didn't say much on the way. He's the kind of man who saves words for when they matter. We parked near the fence line. The smell of rotting trash drifted across the air like smoke from a bad dream. Even from a distance, you could see the mound. Towering, unnatural, wrong. Ray walked ahead of me, boots crunching gravel. He paused when we reached the bridge. "Show me," he said. I pointed to the jagged metal beam near the top, still stained with a dark, dried streak that hadn't been there the day before. Ray stepped closer, squinted, exhaled slowly. "That's blood." "EMTs," I replied. He didn't answer, didn't need to. Instead, he pulled out his phone and snapped 6 photos. "John, this changes everything." I swallowed. "How bad does it get?" Ray put his hat back on, his expression turning from sheriff to something colder. Something like a man looking straight at evil. "Bad enough that somebody's going to jail, maybe more than one." He walked around the pile, inspecting it from every angle, hands on hips, jaw tight, eyes sharpening. I pointed out the items I recognized. That kayak has an HOA sticker, those orange bags, HOA waste day tags, those broken fences, identical to the ones in their common area. Ray lifted one of the bags with a stick and turned it. River Glen HOA, he muttered, printed right on the damn thing. Then he crouched near the base of the mound, where something metallic glinted under a layer of plastic. What's this? He dug it out, a small reflective shard, the corner of a license plate, broken clean off, still faintly showing the first two letters. Ray's eyebrows shot up. Well, somebody backed up hard enough to peel that off. That means a vehicle pulled right onto this bridge, heavy one too. We both knew what that meant. A garbage truck, not an amateur job, not a random illegal dumping, a coordinated act. Ray straightened up. I need to see your cameras. We walked back to the farmhouse. Inside, I pulled up the footage from the last 72 hours. The screen glowed. 1:58 a.m., the night before the ambulance. A large truck creeping across the bridge. Headlights off, moving slow, suspiciously slow. Ray leaned in. Back up, zoom in. I zoomed. A logo came into view. Glen Waste Services. Ray let out a long, humorless breath. Well, I'll be damned. The truck backed into position. 3 figures hopped out, silhouettes, but clear enough. They unloaded trash, shoved furniture, tossed bags, kicked down boards, pushed everything into a tight wall. One man even adjusted the height, like it was some kind of art project. Then they drove off. Ray watched in silence. When the video ended, he stood up so slowly his knees popped. John, this is felony-level dumping, obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, criminal mischief, environmental violation, and if the DA pushes it hard enough, possibly attempted homicide by willful interference. I stayed quiet, let the weight of it settle. Then Ray added, and I'm betting Karen Summers signed the check. We drove to Glen Waste Services next, a squat concrete building on the edge of town, with trucks lined up like rusted cattle. The owner, red-faced and irritated, stomped out to meet us. What do you want? I'm busy. Ray didn't let him finish. 3 of your trucks were on Hale Acres at 2 a.m., illegal dumping. 1 of your men left blood on the scene, and we have your logo on camera. The man paled, hard. Listen, Sheriff, we had a contract, a paying client. I didn't know. Ray took a slow step forward. A paying client? That's interesting. Because if you don't hand me that invoice in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to call the EPA, the State Department of Environmental Quality, and the county DA. He lowered his voice. And trust me, friend, dumping waste on a waterway without a permit is a federal offense. You won't be driving trucks. You'll be riding in one. That broke him. He scrambled inside and returned with a folder, shaking hands, trembling breath. Ray flipped it open, paid with a credit card. River Glen HOA Discretionary Fund. Signed electronically by Karen Summers and Craig Mills. Ray closed the folder and looked at the man. You just burned your best bridge out of this. Hope you enjoyed that paycheck. We left him standing there shaking. Back at the sheriff's office, Ray laid everything out on a long table. Photos of the trash pile, footage stills, the blood smear, the license plate fragment, the Glen Waste invoice, copies of HOA letters, maps, property lines, deed records, even the orange HOA trash tags I'd collected. Ray rubbed his chin. This is more than sabotage. This is conspiracy. I nodded. And they almost killed my family. Ray looked up at me. Really looked. John, when the EMT called it in, they cited delayed emergency access due to man-made obstruction. That report goes to the county, and from the county, it goes to the state. He let out a breath. And the EPA is already calling me back. He slid a form across the table. Environmental dumping into a protected waterway is a big deal, John. Bigger than HOA rules, bigger than county zoning. I traced the blood smear in the photo with my finger. Good, I said quietly. Let it be big. Ray cracked the faintest ghost of a smile. You ready to press charges? I didn't hesitate. I'm ready for all of it. Ray nodded. Then let's get to work. Because now the bridge wasn't just a bridge. It wasn't just lumber or memory or convenience. It was a crime scene. And every crime scene, sooner or later, leads straight back to its criminal. In this case, a woman with a clipboard, a pantsuit, and $20,000 of bad decisions. I didn't go back to the bridge until later that afternoon. My wife and son were resting at the hospital, the nurses keeping a close eye on them. Sheriff Ray told me to head home, get some clothes, catch my breath. But I wasn't going home to rest. I was going home to look that bridge in the eye. The stench hit me before I even reached the river. That sour, rotten smell of garbage cooking under the sun. Trash. On my land, on my bridge. I stood there for a long moment, just breathing, letting the anger settle into something cold and sharp. I could have burned it, bulldozed it, buried it. But none of that felt right. So I called someone who could do exactly what I needed. Mitch, old friend, runs a hauling company, owes me enough favors to start a tab. He answered on the second ring. "Mitch," I said, "I need a truck, a backhoe, and 3 guys who don't ask questions." He spat sunflower seeds into the phone speaker. "What kind of mess you got?" "The kind somebody left for me without permission." He paused. "Oh, return to sender?" I smiled. That's exactly what I had in mind. 2 hours later, 3 dump trucks and a backhoe growled down my drive. Mitch hopped out, pushing his sunglasses up his nose as he stared at the mound. "Lord have mercy," he muttered. "That's not a trash pile. That's poor decision-making in bulk." "You think you can move it?" I asked. "I could move a house if you gave me enough diesel." Then he grinned sideways at me. "You want it gone? Or delivered?" "Delivered," I said, voice low. "To River Glen, right under their stone sign." "Well," Mitch said, rubbing his hands together, "I hope Karen likes gifts." They worked fast, efficient, silent, professional, like a cleanup crew for the world's dumbest crime scene. By sunset, the bridge was spotless, not one board out of place, not one nail left on my property. And at the River Glen entrance, a masterpiece. The garbage mound was restacked, not sloppy, but perfectly symmetrical, almost artistic. A neat pyramid of HOA branded trash bags, broken pallets, splintered fencing, and the kayak placed neatly on top like a crown. The jagged metal beam with the EMT's dried blood, front and center, pointing outward like a warning spike. But the best part wasn't the trash. No, the best part was the sign. Mitch had hammered it into the ground himself. A big piece of plywood, clean, sanded, painted white with bold black letters. "Return to sender. River Glen, HOA. Please claim your property." He even added a little arrow pointing to the trash mound. I swear I could hear angels singing. I didn't stick around long, didn't need to. Because as I pulled away, the first cluster of HOA residents had arrived. Hands on hips, eyes wide, faces twisted between shock and fury. "What is this? Who dumped this here? Why does that sign say our name? Wait, is that blood? Oh my God, was this part of the project Karen mentioned?" A man in golf shorts whispered loudly to his wife. "Did Karen do something illegal?" She whispered back. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised. Then another SUV screeched in. Chrome trim, vanity plate, Glen 4, life, Craig Mills. He jumped out, red-faced and sweating. "What the hell is going on here? Who authorized this?" An elderly lady stepped forward, arms crossed. "We were about to ask you that, Craig." Someone else added, "Craig, is this the dock improvement you used our dues for?" Another voice chimed, "I'm calling for a full board meeting, right now." Craig looked around, residents filming him, whispering behind their hands, pointing fingers. The HOA was cracking, not slowly, instantly. Before the sheriff made one arrest, before the court saw one video, before Karen even realized the noose tightening around her. This wasn't revenge. This was the truth coming home. Return to sender. Courtrooms look grand on TV. Marble floors, echoing ceilings, stern portraits watching from the walls. But the one I walked into that morning was nothing like that. Linoleum floors, flickering fluorescent lights. A faint smell of old carpet and burnt coffee drifting through the air. Didn't matter. What was about to happen in that tiny room was larger than any courtroom I'd ever imagined. My lawyer, Beth Holloway, sat beside me, built like a cattle prod, thin, sharp, and capable of dropping anything twice her size. She leaned in, adjusting her glasses. "Stay calm," she whispered. "They're going to hang themselves." I nodded and looked forward. Karen Summers sat 2 rows ahead. No tennis skirt today, no pastel sweater. Just a dull gray blazer that somehow made her look smaller, older, and far less smug. Beside her sat Craig Mills, sweating through his khakis like someone turned the heat up just for him. The judge entered. Everyone rose, everyone sat. And then the unraveling began. The prosecutor, Ms. Daniels, started with a voice steady enough to cut glass. Your Honor, the state will show that the defendants, acting in pursuit of a private financial development, deliberately blocked an emergency access point, nearly costing the life of a pregnant woman and her unborn child. The judge nodded. Proceed. Daniels clicked a remote. The lights dimmed. A screen lit up. And there it was. The dash cam footage. The ambulance approaching the bridge. The sudden stop. The mountain of trash. Then the EMT's voice. There's no way through. We need to reroute. The room went silent. No whispers. No shifting seats. Just the cold, sharp weight of what those words meant. When the footage ended, Daniels turned to the judge. That obstruction caused a 56-minute delay. Had the patient declined further, we would be handling a homicide case today. Karen stiffened. Craig swallowed hard. Next came Sheriff Ray's photographs. The trash mound, HOA-marked garbage bags, the broken kayak with the River Glen sticker, the jagged metal beam with EMT blood, the license plate fragment, the Glen Waste invoice. The judge leaned forward. That blood. Whose is it? EMT Jacob Myers, Your Honor, Daniels said. He cut his arm climbing over the debris while attempting to reach the patient. A ripple of disgust moved through the room. Then Ray presented my camera footage. The Glen Waste truck creeping across my bridge at 2 a.m. Headlights off. 3 silhouettes unloading trash like they rehearsed it. Adjusting the pile, driving away. The judge watched every second with the cold patience of a man counting nails in a coffin. When it ended, he turned to the defendants. Do either of you dispute that this is your contractor? Karen tried. A tiny whisper. It was community cleanup. Even Craig closed his eyes at that. The judge didn't laugh, didn't smirk, didn't blink. Community cleanup does not occur at 2 a.m. with headlights off. Karen scrambled, voice cracking. I didn't know about the emergency. The project was behind schedule. Mr. Hale was obstructing progress. Beth stood, smiling like a wolf who smelled blood. Permission to play the next recording. The judge nodded. My 911 call filled the speakers. My wife is in distress. She can't breathe. We need help. Urgent. The judge stared at Karen. Mrs. Summers, he told you his wife was due any day, correct? I answered first. Yes, Your Honor. I told her directly. Karen's face crumbled. The judge's voice sharpened like a blade. You didn't just block a bridge. You blocked the only emergency access to a private residence for a project that would have financially benefited you. Karen opened her mouth. Your Honor, Silence. The word cracked across the courtroom. Mrs. Summers, look at the screen. The EMT footage replayed. The stretcher, the climb, the debris. If that mother or child had died, the judge said, you would be facing manslaughter charges. Karen shrank into her seat, but the worst hadn't hit yet. Beth laid out the financial records, payments signed by both Karen and Craig, buried under vague HOA categories. Craig's lawyer tried to speak. Your Honor, my client was merely a passive, but Craig shot to his feet like a guilty jackrabbit. It was Karen, he shouted, voice cracking. She ordered the dump. She signed the work order. I only approved the budget because she told me the board supported it. The room erupted. Karen twisted around, eyes wild. You liar! You told me the investors would pull out. You said we'd lose everything. Craig pointed at her like she carried a contagious disease. I didn't tell you to commit a felony. That was all you. I didn't even know his wife was pregnant. She lunged forward verbally. You begged me to handle it because you were terrified of losing your house. Craig slammed his hands on the table. Well, I didn't tell you to dump 5 tons of trash on his bridge. The judge's gavel slammed so hard the wall shook. Enough! Silence crushed the room. The judge glared at both of them. It appears we have not only guilt, but a complete lack of honor among the guilty. Karen broke. Craig trembled. They had destroyed each other. Right there on the record. The judge rose. Mrs. Summers, Mr. Mills. This court finds you guilty of illegal dumping, obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, misuse of community funds, and conspiracy to defraud. Karen gasped like she'd been stabbed. Craig slumped like a puppet with its strings cut. Mrs. Summers, you are sentenced to 9 months in county jail, fined $37,000, and ordered to complete community service. Mr. Mills, probation, restitution, and a 5-year ban from holding financial office. Then the judge delivered the line that made every reporter in the room stop breathing. This case is not about trash. It is about arrogance, entitlement, and the dangerous belief that power excuses anything. Mr. Hale stood his ground, and today, this court stands with him. The gavel fell. The courtroom shook. Karen wept into her hands. Craig stared at the floor in stunned silence, and I finally exhaled. After everything, the bridge, the trash, the fear, the sleepless nights, the chapter of fighting and chaos had finally closed, and a new one, built on peace, could finally begin. The morning after the verdict, the world felt different. Not quieter. Courtrooms don't silence a person's mind overnight. But lighter, like someone had lifted 100 pounds of wet rope off my shoulders. I drove back to the farm just after sunrise. The fields were damp, the river was calm, and the bridge, clean, rebuilt, reinforced, looked almost proud of itself in the morning light. I stood there for a while, hands on my hips, just breathing. For the first time in weeks, the land didn't feel like a battlefield. But the fallout from that courtroom was just beginning. By noon, the news spread through the county like wildfire. Local stations ran clips of the judges scolding. One headline read, HOA president sentenced for obstructing ambulance, county shocked. Another said, River Glen treasurer implicated in fraud scheme. Folks at the diner stared at the TV like it was the moon landing, and I couldn't walk 5 feet in town without someone stopping me to shake my hand. Glad you stood up to those people, John. About time someone held an HOA accountable. You saved more than your family. You saved every one of us from their nonsense. But the biggest wave of all came from the one government department nobody likes hearing from, the EPA. Sheriff Ray called me the next day. They're here, he said. 3 of them, suits, badges, clipboards. They want to see the site. I met them at the bridge. They walked the riverbank slow, heads down, writing constantly. One of them crouched near the water and scraped a sample of mud into a vial. Another measured the depth where the trash had slid down into the river. They didn't smile. They didn't small talk. They didn't need to. When they finished, one of the agents turned to me. Mr. Hale, dumping construction debris into a waterway violates federal conservation statutes. This will be handled separately from your local case. Meaning what? I asked. Meaning the HOA isn't just in trouble with the county. They're about to be in trouble with the United States government. I nodded, but inside I felt something colder, deeper. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Just justice tightening its grip. They thanked me for my cooperation and walked back to their trucks. As soon as they left, I noticed a cluster of River Glen residents standing at the far end of the bridge. Not the usual HOA board members, just regular homeowners. They looked tired, embarrassed. A few of them kept their hands in their pockets like they didn't know what to do with the guilt glued to their palms. One of them, a middle-aged man in a flannel shirt, stepped forward. John, we're sorry, he said quietly. Another woman added, we didn't know what they were doing. We trusted them. I nodded. I know, and I don't blame all of you. Leadership sets the tone. You just got stuck with bad leadership. Then a third resident, a retired school teacher, held out a box with a ribbon tied around it. It's an apology basket, she said with a shaky smile. It won't fix anything, but we thought it was the right thing to do. Inside were handwritten letters, dozens of them, admissions, apologies, pleas for forgiveness. A few angry ones too, folks furious at Karen and Craig for dragging their entire neighborhood into a scandal. That night, River Glen held an emergency meeting. I wasn't there, but word travels fast in a small town. By a unanimous vote, the HOA board was suspended. Every last member who had supported the Pier project. A third-party property management firm appointed by the county took over operations. And according to Mitch, who heard the whole thing from his cousin, who lived in the neighborhood, the meeting was a riot of shouting, finger-pointing, and residents demanding to know how their dues had been spent. Someone even threw a binder. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my mailbox. No name on the front. Inside was a letter, handwritten in trembling cursive. Mr. Hale, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that many of us are ashamed we didn't ask more questions. We stayed quiet because we were afraid of Karen. Turns out silence can be just as dangerous as action. Thank you for protecting your family, and yours truly saved ours from a rotten board. A River Glen resident. I folded the letter gently and placed it on the kitchen table. Some wounds aren't healed by punishment. They're healed by acknowledgement. And that letter felt like the first real step toward mending something larger than a broken bridge. Life slowly resumed its old rhythm. My days were filled with chores, repairs, and the constant soundtrack of a newborn discovering his lungs. Eli cried, laughed, hiccuped, and slept in cycles that made time feel like a loop rather than a line. Mallory recovered quicker than the doctor expected, her strength returning like spring grass pushing through winter soil. We took evening walks down to the river when the light turned gold. She'd lean on my arm, and I'd hold Eli against my chest, feeling his tiny heartbeat tap against mine. Sometimes we'd stop at the bridge, and I'd catch myself staring at the steel beams, the new timber, the solid gate with its keypad. My own fortress, my own line drawn in iron and oak. One evening, as the wind rustled the grass and the sky turned the soft purple of coming night, Mallory asked, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if they hadn't made it across?" I didn't answer right away. Then I kissed the top of her head. "Every day," I said. "And that's why I'll never let anything like that happen again." She nodded, holding my hand tighter. The world didn't become perfect. HOA drama doesn't vanish from the earth because one court case went the right way. But our part of the world, our farm, our bridge, our family, finally felt safe again. And sometimes that's all a man really needs. By the end of the month, with fall settling in, the bridge looked as strong as the day my grandfather first carved a path across the river. The fields glowed gold. The barn stood firm. The farmhouse smelled like baby powder, wood smoke, and the quiet kind of happiness you earn through storms. Justice had done its part. Now it was our turn to live.